and all the participants who have joined virtually on this webinar. As we all know that the semiconductor is a foundational industry, and what critical role it plays, in almost all the electronic manufacturing, not only electronic manufacturing, in fact, in almost any product we come across today in our life. And further, also, we heard the Honorable Prime Minister today, today in the morning, wherein he underlined that, this manufacturing is not only about investment and the returns. The focus given the changing geopolitics, the focus has also shifted on the sustainability and the resilience aspect as well. Keeping this in mind, keeping the nature of the industry, I think government in its vision announced the ISM 1.0 India Semiconductor Mission a few years back with an outlay of 76,000 crore, and so far we have approved 10 projects under ISM 1.0, and out of which one is in a CMOS fab space, and other is a silicon carbide fabs, and about 6 of them are in the OSAT and ADMP. One is in the advanced packaging, and the other one is in a display wafer packaging. And apart from that, I think there are 24 applications under DLI has also been approved for the design under by various startups and Indian companies. And it's very happy to note that out of 24 companies, almost 14, 15 of them have been able to raise a decent amount of venture capital funding as well for all their products for which they have designed the chips. Further, building on the success of the ISM 1.0, I think, keep and consciously aware that this industry requires sustained support, and because this industry is a marathon and sustained support is needed for this industry. Honorable Finance Minister announced ISM 2.0 in this budget, which was a very welcome sign and giving a clear indication to the industry about the government's commitment to keep supporting the industry even in the coming years as well. I think this webinar is actually intended to invite the comments of all the members as to what elements should constitute in ISM 2.0, because as you all know that this webinar is actually designed or have been called for with the purpose that we heard the voices of all the stakeholders, and we also hear as to what are the implementation challenges which industry might have going forward, and what possible solution the industry proposes to the government to bring it forward so that we are able to achieve the outcomes intended in the ISM 2.0. Apart from that, I think there are 3 additional budget announcements which are relevant to the Indian semiconductor industry. One was about the attracting the large talent pool, which is actually sitting outside the country. I think this budget for the first time has given a tax exemption to any non-Indian for the global income earned abroad for the next 5 years under the notified schemes of the government, and ISM 2.0 and 1.0 as well are notified schemes of the government for sure. So that helps us actually to attract the global talent in India and give them the certainty about the taxation, that any of the global income earned abroad would not be subject to the scrutiny and taxation by Indian tax authorities. The other is about the just-in-time logistics for the component warehousing, because electronic industry, you require various kinds of components. Hundreds of components that are very, and you would want them to optimize your cash flow. I think you would want them, just in time delivered. To catalyze this, I think government has announced the a safe harbor provision for any non-resident Indian company, which provides for 2% profit margin of the invoice value, which roughly comes to about 0.7% income tax. I think this is also likely to further improve the competitiveness. And the third one is about the toll manufacturing model. In case, so there's give option to the company that if any non-Indian company was to actually invest capital here, then their income would also be exempt. With that, I would invite Mr. Rangesh from LAM Research to take the floor and initiate the discussion on the webinar. Thank you so much. You're muted, Mr. Rangesh. You're muted.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for your support as always. I think we are entering a very exciting time in the industry, as we are all aware. This is a great time to be in the semiconductor industry. We've always been at the core, as Sir said earlier. We've always been at the core of the many of the innovations that we use on a daily basis. And in the AI era, this is only becoming more important. So, from my perspective, I don't think anyone in the industry panel will disagree with me that it's very heartening to see the vision and the direction and the leadership shown by the government of India to help establish this industry on a more certain and sustainable footing, as you said, sir. This is a marathon, and to not just give the initial spark, but to provide a holistic level of support across many elements of the business that we need in order to be successful. So thank you for doing that. I'd say now the time has come to briefly mention Minister Vaishnav's remarks that in the Gujarat Semiconnect, he said the first principle of learning to walk. We've kind of got started down that journey. Now it's time to learn to run. And I think with the ISM 1.0 success, we're ready to move on to 2.0. I think we are here to discuss this opportunity today. While we have had that announcement, the ministry has kindly given us this opportunity as industry representatives to provide our inputs to the ministry as to how exactly the contours of the policy may be shaped so that it can be effective. And it's really heartening to see that this input is being sought. The accountability system is being set up. And this is an opportunity for us all on this panel to provide that input, and not only represent our own companies, but represent our segments of the industry to the best extent that we know and understand it, so that the government can formulate policies that are broadly applicable to the entire range of industries. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce a very distinguished panel here. I'll give each of the panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves. I'll start with Mr. Neil Gala from Incore Semi. Mr. Gala, please, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me here. Really glad to be part of this panel and provide my suggestions here. I'm Neil Gala, CTO and co-founder at Encore Semiconductors. Before this, I was part of the creation of the Shakti processor program out of IIT Madras, along with Professor Kamakoti and Madhusudan. Encore is working on building RISC-V based solutions. We are an IP company. We build cores, IPs, network on chips, everything that goes to enable a successful silicon, right? So hardware, software, verification, the entire stack. We've also been promoting RISC-V from this part of the world and have been one of the biggest propellers of that technology globally as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Gala. Mr. Indra Bhai, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. This is Jyotis Indra Bhai. I am the CEO and co-founder of Netrasemi. Netrasemi is building a family of edge AI system on chips. This is designed fully in-house using hardware acceleration IPs we built. We fabricated our first chip in TSMC 12 nanometer. And this is actually a commercial grade AI chip with indigenous IP. And I carry 30 years of experience in semiconductor design, mainly SoC architecture. And I was part of Intel GPU design team and Hitachi Semiconductors, and also was part of some of the deep tech chip startups in California. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. Next, I'd like to invite Pankaj Gulati from CDIL. Introduce yourself, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be here to connect for this ISM 2.0. Fortunately, we are one of the companies who have been approved under ISM 1.0. So thank you very much for all the help and support we received from ISM. My background and my company's background, we have been manufacturing discrete semiconductor components for over 60 years. So we are primarily these days into the power semiconductors, which involves silicon, silicon carbide, OSAT work for customers. And my personal experience is over 40 years into the manufacturing of semiconductors. So I'll restrain or control my inputs based on the actual manufacturing hardware of semiconductors and not much to the design and software, where my colleagues and friends here have very, very long experience. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Next, I'd like to go to Mr. Utpal Shah from Tata Electronics.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we're not able to see you yet.
How about now?
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Hi. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Afternoon, rather. Hi, so my name is Utpal Shah. I lead strategy and business development at Tata Electronics. It's been about two and a half years with the company. Before that, I was part of Intel Corporation in California, Santa Clara, for about 22 years. Through my 20 plus years at Intel, I have spent time in technology development, taking technologies to high volume manufacturing, as well as a significant amount of time on the product engineering side, dealing with the design ecosystem. And over the last few years, I spent time in the new venture that Intel has started called Intel Foundry. So it's been a pleasure to be on the journey here as India is establishing the semiconductor manufacturing locally, domestically in India. And it's been a very exciting journey over the last 2+ years. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today, Utpal. I'll call on Gani Subramaniam, who kind of represents the capital side of things, but has a long history in the industry himself. Gani, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Rangesh. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Ganapati Subramaniam, called Gani, and I started my career in Texas Instruments as a chip designer. Started a couple of companies in chip design, and for the last 10 plus years, I have been in the venture investing in deep technology companies, and chip design is one of our focus. Started Yali Capital in 2024 with the focus of funding deep tech companies, and a large portion of our fund we are committing to the chip design. So looking forward to this discussion.
Great, Gani. Thank you. And then I'll just briefly introduce myself. I'm Rangesh Raghavan. I'm MD of Lam Research in India. Lam Research is a global equipment manufacturing leader, providing advanced equipment technologies to our customers around the world, working on the most advanced semiconductor technologies. Personally, I've been in the industry now for 34 years. I as well, just like you, Gani, I started my career at TI a long time ago, roughly spent a decade at TI and a decade at a company called KLA, which is a peer company to Lam. And then now I've been at Lam for about 12 years. In the industry, I've had various roles, starting from chip R&D at the wafer process fabrication level to now, leading our India organization. So thank you to METI for giving me this opportunity to curate this discussion. I'll also add in my perspective representing the equipment industry as best as I can while we go about doing that. So just to recap, in the budget, what has been discussed about ISM 2.0 is a vision level objective for what the government is looking at from ISM 2.0, and that's been stated to cover areas such as full stack IP, chip design IP, with a vision to create companies from India of the likes of NVIDIA and Qualcomm and MediaTek. So what does it take? And this policy is trying to help get us started down that journey. And then on the other side, looking at the manufacturing side of the equation, what can we do to enable the entire ecosystem that is needed to support wafer fabrication facilities? As mentioned earlier, 1.0 was all directed towards fabs, and we have our Tata Electronics representative here who's building a very exciting facility for us in Dholera. The 2.0 is intended to support those fabs with the rest of the ecosystem that the fabs would need, not only fabs established in India or OSAT companies being established in India, and we have a number of representatives here from OSAT as well. And not only those, but also to see if we can get an export orientation to our capabilities that we develop in this ecosystem. So given that objective, we've divided today's panel discussion into two broad themes. The first theme will be to discuss the opportunity around developing a full stack chip IP ecosystem, and perhaps creating companies that will allow, that will be of the stature perhaps of the global leaders that we know and are familiar with, such as NVIDIA and Qualcomm, etc. So with that in mind, I'm going to direct the first set of questions here on our panel to cover that topic. And so we'll focus on here Netra and Incor as players in this space. So we'll come to you, sir, with the question. We've been 1984 when, or 85 when TI started in India with the first chip design organization. And that's nearly 40 years. And we've been quite successful in establishing a chip design workforce in India. I understand that at least 20% or more of chip designers around the world are based in India. But yet, one would argue we still do not have perhaps a single product company that we can say that has revenues in excess of $100 million. So, given that the industry is likely to hit $1 trillion today, clearly there is a gap between the opportunity that's available and where we have gotten to. So, I'll start with you, Neil. Say, what really has been the challenge, you think, and to achieving, to having more success on the product side than we've had in the past few years?
Thanks for the question, Angesh. See, I think historically India has been looked at as a major services head, right? We've got all the things to build the talent, and that's been a very comfortable space for us to grow in. What has been missing is product ownership or the conviction to own a product. We own a solution that has been designed by someone else, created elsewhere, but having these services. So India has the chip talent, but it's lacked the conditions for the talent to grow and own a product company, right? Because the first silicon is riskier, right? You need support to get that first silicon, and it's even riskier if you've made errors, because it's not a week's turnaround like SaaS companies. You can't patch it overnight. It's going to take another year of patchwork, and it's going to take another year of iterations to get it right. So the conviction for product and it being challenged by the riskiness of what the industry presents, that somehow has not been totally addressed, right? So we have the DLI schemes, right? ISM 1.0 was really amazing that way, that it incentivized people to build products, right? We've got amazing 24 companies going there and building that stuff out. But the challenge still is, why are we still getting people to join Qualcomm and not build their own products, right? And I think one is, the entire mindset that there has to be more incentivizations. There have to be different ways in which people are. For example, as it was mentioned earlier, there has been incentives for getting non-Indians to come here and bring talent. I think the first objective is get the Indians to join this industry first, right? Why not give tax breaks to my own fellow colleagues who've been joining this industry to build something out of India? So tax breaks for Indians before non-Indians. I think that's going to be my candid comment. I don't know what the repercussions are. I don't know what ministry it falls into, but I would definitely like that to happen. That I want people to not go to the AI bubble, to stick with the semicon bubble. Then you can tell them to build products, right? So I think that's one part of the story, that while the talent exists, what incentives do they have to go venture, right? And that brings me to the other part of capital patience. Now, the DLI scheme brings in the 50% incentives. We were one of the IP companies who actually got there. We don't do full chips, but we build everything till GDX, right? We support our customers all the way to there, and it was a different conversation to the committee saying, I don't want to do chips, but I can do everything to build one, right? That has to change. I think ISM needs to sensitize that. For more chip companies, you're going to have more IP companies. And for more IP companies, you're going to have a lot more automation also, right? So if you look at the trend, we've invested in fabs. We're planning to invest in tech or IP stack, which is what you're mentioning, to get into Qualcomm's and the NVIDIAs. You're eventually going to start saying, oh, can I get Synopsys and Cadence as well, right? Let's not wait for that wave to happen. I think that should be some of the incentivizations to happen, because those are less riskier, they're easier to implement, they're easier to fund as well, right? So to answer your question, how do I get to Qualcomm and NVIDIA? That shouldn't be your first step. It's going to be gradual. It has to be taken one at a time. We've started with the fabs. We got to incentivize more IP companies. And the one thing that I think the government can do amazingly well is mandates. We got to get out of this comfort zone of guidelines. Oh, I would like to have a CCTV camera. I would like to have some IPs with Indian versus saying I need it. Right? There is no other option. The import substitution cannot be a guideline. It has to be a whip. Right? I think enough carrot has been thrown around, and you can see by the commitment of 24 DLI companies trying and doing that. But if we cannot incentivize demand, the supply is going to rot. Right? So I think there has to be a concrete mandate. There has to be concrete policies, so that the first silicon, which is still riskier and has been subsidized by DLIs and other incentives, at least has some notion of success within the borders, if not outside the borders, right? So I will, let my colleague speak here.
Yeah,
Jyotis,
Jyotis.
take it
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, sure. I think Neil has told most of the things I wanted to tell. Yeah, but to start with, I mean, let's go back to 1980s when we had our first chipset from India, even before TI was here, which is Arjun Krishna, right? But the problem is we have these moments, but we do not capitalize them. We don't do production engineering and make them really ready for the market. So I think ISM 1.0 or even 2.0 should ensure that our startups goes all the way through the production engineering phase and going to the volume sale phase. So to answer your question, yes, we have more than 20% Indians in this industry, and almost all of them are working in NVIDIA's, Intel's, and Qualcomm's, or even at least doing services for them. They are not building Indian startups, right? So that means they are not helping the ecosystem. So for India, the real semiconductor journey has started just 3 years back when PM Modi announced that we want to be a semiconductor nation. So that is when the real, I would say, the commercial journey of Indian semiconductor system has started. Before that, it is all, I would say, suicide squads, a bunch of entrepreneurs with the skills and passion. They ventured into the semiconductor space and they tried to make these ventures. But there were no venture support, no VC support, no tool support, not even the basic stuff required for building the semiconductor companies. Even talent did not join them. But the ISM 1.0 and the DLI changed a lot of things. So that means now those suicide scouts have tools, EDA tools, and they have the lot of VCs are getting interested in investing in Indian startups. Ecosystem talking to them, and a lot of domestic market demand is getting opened up for them. So that means I'm saying all these things happened in the last 3 years. So now they can start taking on the MNCs and the big players of the world, right? So to directly answer your question, the 100 million revenue, that will happen, and that will happen in the next 10 years. Don't assume that it will happen in 1 or 2 years. Deep tech startups need at least 10 years to reach that phase. First 5 years for completing their R&D, and next to 5 years for doing the production engineering, volume built up, demand built up. So we have to be patient to invest those many years. Without that, and once you invest that, then you have Qualcomm's, Broadcoms, and Intels in India, right? So my humble request is ISM 1.0 or 2.0 is not to put over expectations and expect that things will happen in the next 2 years or even whatever years you have in mind, right? So my suggestion is just focus on, I mean, it is a great term I heard in this budget, which is full stack design, which is an extremely important piece for building that 100 million startup.
Great. I'll go to you, Gunny, because you also have been an entrepreneur on the chip side. You have created and sold companies. You've also had observed this industry, this side of the industry very closely. So putting on your entrepreneur hat, not your capital hat right now, for now, give us your perspective on why, after having a 40-year journey, we don't have the $100 million companies. So if we understand the root causes, we can then work on the solutions to those.
Thanks, Rangesh. So, very quickly, I mean, I just did some, some broad level numbers. I believe Israel, far lesser than our population, would have done, in my mind, more than $50 billion worth of acquisition in Indian in fabulous companies, while India, with nearly 40 years of experience, would have less than half a billion product companies. I'm not saying services companies, product companies, right? So our, in terms of creating India-owned headquartered companies, our performance, I would say, is not exemplary for sure. Not even good, worth mentioning. I think the reasons to me is largely several. One is, so far there was a lack of risk capital, right? By the way, it's not the US was very different. US really had a very large gap in semiconductor funding or fabulous companies funding in 2017 times, right?
Yeah.
The fabulous industry went to a tank, and then it started, rising up after AI. I hear some echo, but maybe the others can mute except the speaker. So, one quick, quick stuff is, it's not that I mean, US was great or somebody is great. Even Europe is struggling. There is no Qualcomm or Nvidia in Europe, or neither in I would say China. That class of companies. Uh, so in my mind, lack of risk capital is a big reason. India never had good amount of risk capital to folks like Incor and Netra Semi to begin with. They had to struggle their way, and in that time they lose precious time. Idea Forge, for example, a drone company, is unconnected to Fabulous. First 7 years was just spending on with no capital. So you lose 7 useful years where you have the highest energy having no capital. But that's being addressed now, right? A DLI is helping to them, and more than that, risk capital itself is happening, and RDI fund will really help, I think, in getting risk capital. Second is, I also feel that India, Neil kind of alluded to that. The GCCs have, we expect more companies to come from GCCs. There will be some like Neil who would come from universities, but you quite some of guys from universities, from GCCs who come and start these companies, and those guys have, so far had their career in doing a portion of the chip, a portion of the fabulous system, right? They might have been exceptional designers, but may not have the ability to do manufacturing in large volume, packaging, working with TSMC to get the capacity, really, driving 10 million volumes, build a GTM story. I think that portion of the skill set is still lacking. I think the product architecture, I think we are a little lower. I'm not saying it's zero. I think we have a room to improve on product architecture. We have a big room to improve on GTM. Today, if you want to do in A, by the way, if chip design we can talk, but beyond AI and data center, there is hardly any investments going on other areas, right? So if you look at it, then the epicenter of that happens to be US. If you are not closer to hyperscaler, you are not going to build a great company in India. So lack of product talent, product architecture talent to some extent, GTM talent to a larger extent is a big reason. Risk capital, some talent gap. And third is, which is most important, is, we don't have customers next to me. I think that's, in my opinion, the biggest problem. If you look at Taiwan and China, they started service EMS companies, and then the EMS companies would say that, what, I'm importing like 5 million chips from Maxim and TI. Why don't I start a rich tech which could replace a Maxim and TI, right? And then they will give 10% to the local company, 90% to TI, and eventually flip it to fully to a local company. We don't have any such companies procuring from India. So so the lack of end equipment companies or the OEMs sitting next to us is a big gap. So if you want to be successful in Fabulous, please make sure that you are building high class end equipment companies right next to in this center, which is able to procure the chips from him. So let's take Netra Semi, right? If Netra Semi builds a world class security camera, I don't know them well, but let's say they're building a world class security, who is going to consume them and use them? Is there a company as good as Netra Semi who will be able to use all the features of Netra Semi and build a world-class end equipment company? And if you don't invest there, you are now going to starve these guys. It will take 10 years, as he says. But if he has this, he may be able to probably ramp up in 3 years or 4 years. So anyway, lack of risk capital, but that's getting addressed by RDI. lack of talent, which I think we should be open to go and put centers in Silicon Valley or Taiwan, wherever it is required to fill the gap till a point comes we are self-sufficient. We never may be, but we should be open to set up centers worldwide. Third is build the ecosystem, complete ecosystem, not just fabless companies.
Okay, sorry. I'll turn your own root cause on you now, Gani, because you said lack of risk capital and you are in the capital business. So help us understand why there has been a lack of risk capital. And then going forward, what is it that ISM 2.0 can do to help address that particular issue?
So risk capital lack is not just related to fabulous. It's related to deep tech. In India, we had for a very long time. The services industry is a low risk cost arbitrage game. I'm not going to say that's a fantastic. They have done very well. They have built a phenomenal services company, and then it turned out to be local market, building on new business models like Ola, Flipkart, and all that stuff. Again, done very well. But deep tech requires, you don't see revenue for a long time. You take a chip design company, between Series A, Series B, Series C, hardly you will see big progress. They might not even taped out, right? I mean, they're building this chip. It's taking enough time for them to do emulation, verification. Maybe the first tape out come, they're fixing it. So our ability to stay patient with a company which is not showing visible revenue results for a long time has been lacking. And Indian deep tech, in my opinion, is a work in progress. We have started late. Not that we lacked STEM talent, but the risk capital system in India started late, and we are yet to understand the nuances of deep tech. We have not seen huge exits. Always exits will make a huge difference. When two or three are successful, a lot of people will line up. So I think we have been slow because we didn't have the sufficiently well-equipped VC system. I don't think our venture capitalists were willing to take risks on deep tech companies. And Fabulous is a typical example of a deep tech where you have to deploy capital, and wait for a long time. And we didn't have that patience. Now, even without ISM2, I think RDA will fix it. I think RDA is very focused on deep tech. It's a very large capital that is coming into the ecosystem. So my view is, RDA hopefully will help to fix the risk capital, and even many VCs are now becoming deep tech VCs. They are saying that they are very keen on deep tech companies. We still don't have VCs, the partners and the GPs who are as equipped as Silicon Valley in terms of understanding the difficulties of fabulous companies. Fabulous is a very difficult journey, and they don't understand it. They could even sometimes pain the entrepreneurs, but eventually I think we will learn. Our VCs will learn. So capital will get addressed, in my opinion. From ISM 2.0, I'll tell you my only request is capital. I have a feeling in India, being here for last, I don't know, 35 years and last 10 years in capital, raising money. I personally don't think capital is going to be an issue for our entrepreneurs or the VCs. We are going to get plenty of money. What we lack is the other two gentlemen said, right? I think Neil kind of again said it nicely. We don't have consumers for our ICs, right? If ISM can say these are the 10 critical ICs, where is our talent pool? The talent pool is in GCCs. Can they learn GTM story tomorrow? No. Can they learn manufacturing story tomorrow? No. But can the ISM deploy high-end management skills and define 10 ICs, okay, and say this is the ICs I want to build, and then clearly communicate we are going to consume it in India? I think there is enough VCs to come, and there is enough guys in GCCs to come. So we need to understand our limitation. We need to really define the specs and drive the local consumption. Automatically, we will start building good companies. That's a big gap. ISM 2.0, in my opinion, should focus on this, the GTM side, local consumption, demand creation. That's for, if you want a, see, I'll just end it with this. If you want a NVIDIA, nobody is going to buy tomorrow chips from you to replace GPUs. Nobody. But if India says I need 1 lakh GPUs, and 1 lakh GPUs I'm going to only buy from Indian companies, 100%, you will see a lot more changes, right? So I think that is what I would suggest is a key thing for ISM 2.0.
So I go back to you, Jyotish, and ask you. So, from what would you look for from ISM 2.0? Because I think perhaps none of us are happy with the 10-year timeline. So, let's say, what would it take to make it 5 years? First of all, and then second, broader. Again, think from a broader perspective. What would you look for specifically? There are specific things that came about in 1.0. What would you look for in 2.0? You're muted, Jyotish.
Yeah, thank you for asking this question. And for us, fortunately, it is not 10 years, it is 5 years. We have passed the 5 years already. So, and, but those 5 years are there, I know, because of the production engineering, the maturity, this NVIDIA's and Broadcom's, they built those systems over the years. NVIDIA is already 30 plus years, right? But it can be done. It needs focus, and ISM 1.0 removed a lot of hurdles from the fabulous world. Now the investors are available, and as a company, we were able to raise around 15 million of funds over the last 1 or 2 years, which was, we could not do it earlier. And the tools are available. The talent is there. India is rich, has a very rich talent. And a lot of ecosystem partners are talking to us, like, for example, the OSATs, the test houses, all those things. So a lot of ecosystem is there in place. Now it is the real game where you create a differentiating IP and make sure that you have all control over the complete flow of full stack, which includes the tool chains, reference designs, customers. Even I am very, it is heartening to see that Meiti and other players are trying to create a kind of market for us. That is also very important for us. But as Ganapati already pointed out, it is not just Indian market alone. If you are a fabulous company, you have to look around the world. You have to compete in the world. You cannot simply wait for the incentives and the ISMs alone, right? But what can ISM do it, right? ISM's 1.0, I would say it was a great success. ISM 2.0 can learn on top of that and identify which are the important pieces which are missing in ISM 1.0. I would say ISM 2.0 should tap the biggest opportunity out there today, which is AI. As Ganapati rightly pointed out, why we should buy all these GPUs from US? Why can't we build at least 20% from India? Why can't we create a full stack AI from India? Full stack AI, when I say hardware platforms, IPs, chips, fabulous chips, even production engineering happening in India, right? So if that is a goal which ISM 2.0 take, AI itself is good enough for us to achieve the first 100 million target, right? And naturally, once you solve that, uh, when I talk to multiple chip companies around the world, what I have heard is even the product makers, the India is second biggest market. Why can't that market advantage be taken in favor of fabulous companies in India through ISM 2.0? So that is probably the answer we should answer, the question we should answer. And if you play the games properly, we can actually create at least 5 deep tech companies from India using the AI opportunity alone, right? And of course, ISM 2.0 should consider semiconductor or a fabulous semiconductor market as a 2 separate sectors. One is the legacy semiconductor sector and deep tech and next generation semiconductor sector. And you need to understand the capital requirements, infrastructure requirements, and even market requirements for those 2 separate sectors. And if you do that, we can create a very clear roadmap for the deep tech sector and address the most advanced opportunities in the semiconductor journey.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What I've heard from both of you is, the fabulous design ecosystem is actually not just about that. We need to think broader. We need to think about the end market for that ecosystem as well as the talent market for that ecosystem. We'll come back to talent in a bit, but I want to go to you, Neil, and ask you what would you look for specifically from ISM 2.0?
I think I'm going to piggyback on what Gani said, right? ISM needs to be the aggregator, we have to have definite problem statements. If everything comes from academia, then everything is a risk. Right? It's research and maybe something will figure things out. I think, defining and saying, I don't want to just call RISC-V as my, Atmanirbhar ISA. I really want chips to be deployed on that, right? Take that mandate. You want to take 5%. Let the chips come from somewhere else. It's fine, but at least they're RISC-V. You've made a move. You made a strategic move, which can now incentivize internally. So I think, defining that these are the 5 chips, or these are the 5 SoCs, or these are the 5 block diagrams I want indigenized, right? Don't give people any margin to move around or go innovate in any other place. These are 5 engineering tasks. Forget R&D. R&D is a separate problem, which is going to be a long-term thing, right? Define the 5 engineering problems or chips that are going to solve things. Take a strong stand on the mandate, saying that, I want this. Now that I have defined it, I want all consumers to move to this. I think that strong stand is required, right? India first policy. I don't care if the India first policy is 60% bad or 40% lower in quality than China or anywhere else, but India first, right? That's the mark that ISM has to go for, because once that is done, once you have, promoted your suppliers, they will go from 60 to 80. They have to, they have no other choice, because now there are more customers that require better quality. But that first low quality adoption, the government is the only one that can do it. So how can ISM do that? Incentivizing, getting more DLIs, lowering the barriers of adoption in some places, right? The other way to answer, how do I get one Qualcomm? The answer to that is first get 100 encores, right? One of them will then have a chance to become a Qualcomm. How do you get 100 encores? You don't have to pay every encore, $5 million or $3 million of incentivization. Lower the barriers, right? DLI 1.0 required us to say that you go find a customer and then we will give you the grant and show me full traction and show me investors. Screw it. Give me 2 crores, show me simulation output. 20 startups just doing that. You've built a Verilog simulation model, which says if this goes to production, I have some margin of success. And that's how you get 100 people incentivized. That's how you get more. So I think we need to have a track somewhere in some of these incentives where it's lower barrier. You should be funding ideas, not just because they have customers, but because they have a conviction to build something new, right? Some of them can become, R&D. Some of them can actually solve engineering problems. One of them will eventually become the Qualcomm and the NVIDIA that we set out to be. But as Joseph said, that's a long-term vision, but it has to start with these small grain-sized seeds that will lead there. Thanks.
Great. So what I heard from the three of you, and if I kind of were to summarize that, as specifically inputs to ISM 2.0, is that there's a supply and then there's a demand side. So we have been working on the supply side a little bit. We've been talking about it, but it's not enough. We need to aggregate. ISM can drive the government, perhaps not by itself ISM, but drive the rest of the government, the other parts of the government, perhaps the defense organization, or perhaps some of the other ways in which they can create incentives for OEMs to procure from India locally, etc., to then help drive aggregation, right? And maybe we can come up with some specific ideas for how demand aggregation can be done in a way that is still going to help meet those customers' objectives as well, right? So creating incentives for people to buy from you, as well as incentives for you to overcome your initial barriers is what sort of I heard. And what I heard is 1.0 did a great job of overcoming those initial barriers. I heard from you, Gani, saying that risk capital will now come. There is the RDI scheme. There is opportunities in if VCs see the right products and the right product fit and the right team, they're likely to invest. But then what we need then, if they also saw the demand, then that kind of completes the loop. And to get to the bigger picture, we need to be successful with 25, 30 of these before we get there. So DLI alone is not enough because that is a supply side. On the equivalent PLI in electronics, etc., the demand was always there. There was a given. Here, the demand is not a given within India, and we have to compete globally. And to help overcome that initial phase, perhaps we should integrate that. Is that a fairly good summary of what you guys said?
Yes, Rangesh,
Yeah,
nicely done.
pretty perfect.
Yeah. Would you like to add anything else to that? I see Sushilji taking notes very in detail here. So I'm sure anything else you want to add, he'll be very keen to hear. Nope. Okay, great. So with that, we'll go to the other main theme, which was
Can I,
part of the, yeah.
Rangesh, can I add one point? I know this is I'm
Sure,
not
sure,
on
sure,
the
sure, sure.
side,
Sure,
but I did
sure.
spend some time in product engineering, so I think there are a couple of
Yeah,
things I just wanted to quickly mention.
sure.
See, for the startups, when they want to become a product company, like a chip product company, there are a few things they need. They need people, they need this EDA environment, uh, they need a set of IPs because they are going to focus on a particular innovation. The peripheral IPs is something they need access to uh, affordably, and then they need a way to test their silicon in an affordable manner. So I think today, if I look at ISM 1.0, see, the startups have the people. There's no lack of design experts in India. They have the EDA environment, which was the provision in ISM 1.0. I think we got to do something in terms of MPW, for them to be able to have a fast track silicon validation. So some sort of red carpet treatment for multi-product wafer access at a lower cost. And it will be wonderful. It will be wonderful if that red carpet MPW program is indigenized, so that startups, can benefit from the co-location of the manufacturing technologies, co-location of the MPW program. And then there is the set of IPs. So if you're focusing on a particular innovation with a RISC-V ISA, you don't want to worry about some USB IP or other IPs that you need for your product. So how can you get those IP quickly at an affordable rate? That is something that we must create. We must create a local IP ecosystem of hard IPs on indigenized technologies through the means of CDAC or other vehicles that we have. I think if these startups have EDA access, IP access, MPW, they have a very fast track to actually generating silicon results.
Great. Great input, Utpal. And I think also, with Tata's Foundry coming up, there's another opportunity for these fabulous startups to have, better access to PDKs and get qualified faster locally.
Exactly. And the reason I'm mentioning this, Rangesh, also is that as a new foundry in India, we will not be able to compete with the likes of TSMC in terms of IP ecosystem.
Yeah.
So it is very important that we create that indigenized uh, portfolio for IP and MPW, right? So those are my 2 cents on this topic.
Yeah, this is valuable to you as well in terms of your scaling up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful. Great additional points. Thank you for stepping in, Utpal. Actually, I should have done that. Can I ask any of the other speakers? You may be on the other side of the equation here, but if you have anything to add, please do. Otherwise, we'll move on to the other theme of ISM 2.0, which is around equipment and materials and the supply chains around the manufacturing ecosystem. So before we go there, I must apologize to Diganta from Inox. Diganta, I completely missed to introduce you in my list of folks on the screen here. Your name was not visible, so my sincere apologies for missing you at the start of the session. Would you please kindly introduce yourself and your company and what is it that you represent, and then we can get into the manufacturing side of this. Yeah.
No worries. Thank you, Rangesh. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Diganta Sharma. I lead the strategy and business development for Inox Air Products. We are an industrial gases and materials company. We operate in India over in 19 states now. We have 60 manufacturing locations. We have $1 billion worth of investments in air separation and other technologies that we do. We are a joint venture with a global company called Air Products. So it is Inox Group of India and Air Products of US. This joint venture is operating This is the largest or longest operating JV of an Indian company with a US company in India. It's 27 years now. We do primarily the material side of things. As I said recently in another forum, I consider the gases and materials as the bloodstream of the ecosystem of making a chip. Without blood, human beings don't survive. You need oxygenation of the blood, and similarly, you need this blood to flow in the chip ecosystem to have its chip at the end. We talk about 50, 60 different chemicals with very high purities and a lot of good reliability and redundancies built in. Globally, Air Products have been in this business with a lot of the global players in TSMCs of the world and Intels of the world, with over defense or co-located models of supplies. And this is what we are proactively building in India. We already have allocated land in Dodera next to the Tata Fab, where we are building our air separation unit and the specialty gas fulfillment center. So just to add to the other topic that you had before we move to material side, I think the takeaway from me has been, the so-called offtake guarantee that that some of these speakers have talked about. We also need the same in the material side on the development of the system locally. We need a quick way to qualify new gases and new suppliers into the ecosystem. So that is something ISM2 can help us. It was not there in ISM1, if I tell you frankly. There was a system called SPECS, which I was told by the time many of us applied, the budget got over. So in spite of qualification, we were not given any money. So ISM2, here's a chance to redeem yourselves. Help the ecosystem with the same support that you gave to the fabs and the OSATs. And of course, even without any support, we did proactive investment. The first OSAT that was inaugurated, we are the material suppliers to that, material partners for all the materials there in terms of gases. So happy to extend that to the rest of the 9 that is coming up and whatever comes in ISM 2.0.
Great. Welcome, Diganta, to the discussion. And now I'll go to some set of questions that we put together here to talk about this other theme. I'll start with you, Utpal. Now that you have built, or you're, in our minds, already built your fab, and things are well underway. Big part of ISM 1.0 was the flagship investment of the Tata Electronics, both on the fab side and on the OSAT side. With that foundation well underway now, what do you think are the most critical areas for the ecosystem around that investment that you're making? And perhaps even thinking about what other peers of yours might be making and thinking about. What do you think are the most critical areas where India needs to strengthen our ecosystem? So can you speak to some of that? You're muted, Utpal.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So first of all, I'd like to start with thanking Sushil Pal and Meety for listening to many things that we had to say about areas that need to improve, and many of those things, if not all of those things, have now been reflected in the budget. So I would call out a huge vote of appreciation from our side for that. I know ISM 2.0 is in the pipeline. I'll talk to some of the recommendations that we have shared already with Meety. But before that, let me just comment on the few critical items that we really appreciated in the budget that came out. First of all, I think attracting foreign talent has been a challenge. There was a taxation reform that got included in the budget that will definitely help with attracting the foreign talent. This is for making sure that their foreign income is not taxed in India for a period of 5 years. So that's a wonderful welcome news for us. It's already helping in some of our recruiting of international talent. Second, many of the customers that we are dealing with have expressed that they would also like to support us with purchasing of the equipments in our factories. So the provision of toll manufacturing that got included in the budget is also very welcome news. This provides the taxation relief to those companies from the permanent establishment standpoint, and it's a welcome. It's a very welcome news for us, and I'm sure many others here in the audience. Third, there is a provision on vendor managed inventory, which is a key thing for semiconductor industry. If you look at all the global hubs, whether it's Taiwan, Singapore, there is this vendor managed inventory. In the recent budget, we have given that provision for non-resident companies to have component warehousing in the bonded warehouse, giving them the tax relief. So this will tremendously help us in establishing our ecosystem, semiconductor manufacturing ecosystem in India. Fourth, we have duty exemptions that are continuing on the semiconductor equipments. That's again a very welcome news. Very much looking forward to benefiting from that. And the last thing we talked about demand creation. Gunny and Neil talked about that. The fact that we have offered tax holidays until 2047 for AI data centers, I think that will generate, that will bring a lot of these OEMs into India. And by having that top level control, some of the decision making as to where the chips are getting designed, where the chips are getting manufactured, I think those things we will have a better influence with the influx of data center investments that are announced already in India. So those are all the good things. I really want to thank Meety on that. Now going into ISM 2.0, the sorry, I'm getting some. If you can please mute. So Fab and OSAT plants that we are now in a construction phase, we have realized that these largely capital intensive plants require a certain amount of scale to make it financially viable. So first and foremost, we would like to request, we've already made this request through our submission to ISM, that these type of capex subsidies should continue for a certain number of fabs and OSAT plants in India, so that there is enough scale in the country to make it self-sufficient in the future to fund itself, and therefore not requiring government subsidies. But we are currently in a phase where a sustained supply of subsidy will be needed until we get to a certain number of fabs and OSAT plants in the country. So that's the first thing on the table as far as ISM 2.0 is concerned. Second, attracting the ecosystem into India is also very important because the downstream ecosystem of equipments and materials is very crucial. These companies also have large investments to make, and therefore subsidy availability in the downstream supply chain ecosystem is also extremely important. There are certain areas of the supply chain that are more crucial for us than others. These are examples of these are photo masks. We will have external dependency on the masks. It is very important that India, as part of ISM 2.0, gives priority to those components that need to be localized in the close proximity of the fab. So photomask is one area that it is extremely important that we localize a production of photomask in India. Similarly, materials that are having very short shelf life, like photoresists, are important to be localized as well. So these are companies that I would prioritize in terms of giving the investments. By the virtue of giving investment subsidy for the larger products, for the larger projects like fab, those dollars are going to water flow into the equipment and materials industry. So you're already doing that. But certain segments like photomasks, photoresists, CMP slurry, some specialty chemicals, these are things out of the entire landscape of equipment and materials, are things that we need to prioritize, because it will be one, very important to localize them, and two, it will be difficult for those companies to localize because of the investment needed. Third thing I want to say on this is that we have uh, taken care of the industrial infrastructure and the capital subsidy needed for these kind of projects, which is one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the whole social infrastructure that is needed for these kind of projects to thrive in India. And what we are lacking today is proper policy structure on the social infrastructure. Um, Either the social infrastructure is fully developed by the government in those regions, or there can be some subsidy or policy structure for the private companies to develop the social infrastructure rapidly. Because if we only operate on one side of the coin, which is industrial infrastructure and capital subsidy, and do not focus on the social infrastructure, which is the other side of the coin, the projects may have trouble in terms of thriving, attracting talent, and reaching its peak capacity that we are all envisioning. Those are my inputs from the manufacturing side. We already talked about demand creation, which is very important earlier in the discussion. I think there is an opportunity on the government front to mandate certain sectors to be designed and manufactured in India. And that's where I believe that a program like dedicated program like multi-product wafer shuttles, as well as some sort of policy on a porting of hard IPs onto the local indigenized technologies is going to be important. Finally, the R&D policy that has come out, we really appreciate that. That will allow us to go down to the technology nodes like 7 nanometer, introduce FinFET technology, further bring the EUV technology in India, which is extremely necessary for some of the advanced chip design products. So we are working on how to take advantage of the RDI policy and have certain business models that are good, that are win-win for both public and private sectors, both government and private companies. Because it's an R&D project and it's not a high volume commercial project, it requires a different type of treatment from the current policy that is working fabulously in terms of commercial projects. So when it comes to R&D, the longevity of how long it takes to develop these technologies and the capital intensity required, it actually requires some more support from the government on these R&D projects than the commercial projects that we have underway. So those are my inputs, Rangesh, from Tata Electronics. You're on mute. You're still on
muting, I think. Well, thank you, Utpal. Very detailed and specific set of asks there. I appreciate that. Let's go to Pankaj from CDIL to see your perspective, again, as a manufacturer from the ecosystem point of view.
Yeah, hi. I think Utpal covered most of it being from the manufacturing side, but there are certain areas that I would like to add on. In fact, what initially started as a demand creation, which was raised by Gani and the other colleagues also, I think that the issue here is now that with the so many OSATs that have been approved, it's important to create a domestic demand. With the EMS companies currently doing very well with the growing businesses, but most of the components are still being imported. Even the ones that are being approved under the OSAT, they are still importing. So it's extremely difficult. I think directing or making some sort of a compulsion for them to buy will probably not work out. What I have seen in other countries, during my travel to Korea, Taiwan, or even China, there is some sort of an incentive that they offer for procuring the domestic manufactured components. So this could be in form of whether it's GST benefit or whatever it is. I'm not expert in that area, but any such incentive to the EMS companies to procure the components of the domestic manufactured OSATs will probably build the supply chain from OSAT to the EMS, which will in turn help build the supply chain for inputs into OSAT. So it's like a chain. The whole chain has to start. So one of the suggestion is that we should have some incentives for the components made by OSATs in India to be procured by the domestic companies manufacturing in India. Now, secondly, the issue is that the OSATs today, we've been in OSAT for long and about 30 years also in the wafer fab that we stopped in 2008. So I'll give my inputs both for the OSAT and the wafer fab a little bit to the limited knowledge on the areas. The identify the common raw material inputs that go under the OSAT, which primarily to me seems to be lead frames, the molding compounds, the bonding wires, the packing tapes and the tubes, the bonding tools, pickup tools, wire bonding tools, the chemicals, even as simple as the plating chemicals today. I understand that some companies are importing the plating chemicals too. And every OSAT will need most of these materials. So these in materials have to be identified. The vendors for these materials today, many OSAT companies, I'm sure Utpal will have a lot of connects, and we also have connects. We can talk to the vendors, manufacturers of these materials, and under the ISM 2.0, ask them to come to India to start manufacturing as a supply to the OSAT companies. Now, they do not have to get the 50% incentive and all other type of incentive that was given under 1.0, because these companies will now have some sort of a secure market available to them. So the OSAT, moment they start functioning, everybody will need lead frames. Everybody will need molding compounds. Yeah, they could be different, etched lead frames or stamped lead frames, but there are companies available. And in my discussion in the last 2 months that I've been traveling, uh, they are keen. They're looking at India. They are keen, and they're looking for some sort of a support under the ISM 2.0, because they were aware of what happened under ISM 1.2, and they're very keen now because the ISM 1.2 was actually an acid test. They were not sure it's going to go through or not. When they have seen the success of 1.0, thanks to METI, ISM teams, they are now keen to come under 2.0. And so some sort of an incentive to them to come in, maybe a 25% capital incentive and linked with the PLI, or whatever way this can be worked out, will definitely help them enter into the market and come to India. Thirdly, the materials. I've listed a lot of materials. I've told you about the assembly side. On the chemical side, which what Utpal rightly said, during our days when we used to do a fab, photoresist was a big issue. Half of it used to get, when it expired by the time it reached our facility. So photoresists, masks is very right. We used to get our mask made from UK. So you can imagine the time delay, we used to send the tape outs and masks coming in from UK. The doping chemicals, BBR3, the POCl3, the BN, the wafers, these are all important inputs to the wafer fab. So, and there are companies who are with the Tata fab coming in, there's a lot of noise around, and there are companies who would definitely want to look into it. And I think SCL can share some of the pain points, because SCL has been operating fab for long. So they probably are aware of more pain points on the fab material. But on the assembly side, the OSAT side, I believe that the chemicals for plating, the lead frames, the molding compound, and bonding wire, these 4 or 5 areas are clearly identified for this. Thirdly, the talent pool support. Today, I think most of the OSAT companies are facing a shortage on the trained talent, including when we even go to IITs and other places. I mean, I've been going to most of these colleges during some seminars and talking to the students. They're taught, but they're not taught what is they need to expect in the industry. There's a vast gap in there. We're trying to bridge it up, but there's a vast gap. So maybe ISM 2.0 can have some sort of a small lab where they have the whole set of assembly equipment, OSAT equipment, die bonding, wire bonding, molding, standard equipment, and they give a certificate course for 6 months, 1 year, for the students who are actually interested to come into this hardware. With my friends here, pardon me, the software is an attraction for them. They don't want to work where a small mask can go into the hardware. They are very happy working on a laptop and working on the libraries. But yes, there are some students who I have talked to, they are interested, keen. with so much of noise around semiconductors. I mean, I've been in the industry for 40 years, but the excitement in the last 8 years has never been. So I really wish this happened about 30 years earlier. But whenever it's never too late. So there is a lot of excitement. So a lab built by under the ISM 2.0 with 2-3 different packages: surface mount package one, the power package the other one, the IPM as the third one. IPM has a lot of market, and this type of a support training talent pool will definitely help out most of the OSAT companies which are facing a talent pool shortage today. So I was to the point. Sorry, Rajesh. Wonderful. Sorry, you are on mute, sir. You are on mute.
Again. All right. Well, thank you, Pankaj. I think that was very brief, but concise, but very hard hitting. So very clear points. Thank you. I'll go to Diganta now to represent the material side. Yeah, Diganta, what is your view on the current challenges in the materials delivery side of the ecosystem? And what can ISM 2.0 do to help you differently? There is the money side, but there's beyond money. We could talk about that as well. But beyond that, what else can be considered under 2.0 as well?
Right. So, first of all, the government must be applauded. They have expanded the scope to include the equipment, materials, design, IP, supply chain resilience, all of that in the ISM 2.0. So that's a really great step forward. We looked at it from a point of view of setting up so-called reliable and sustainable supply chain for the fabs and the OSAT. So in terms of the support that we think the government can really provide here, it is basically if I look at the whole list of materials that on the gases side that needs today, 90% is imported. So the first thing would be obviously to set up a local manufacturing, and also maybe some kind of an industry-led R&D center where we can co-develop new products, chemistries and materials for the semiconductor industry. That is the first thing because the uptime of the fabs, as you know, is measured in seconds, and therefore if we had a local reliable supply chain, which is instead of depending on long import supply chains, that would really help the situation. All of us remember the Ukraine war, which led to the shortage of neon, one of those gases. Now, if you look at India, neon is available in air separation plants in a big way. What we don't have is the purification infrastructure of neon that comes out of the air separation. So that is something that the Indian industry can do if there was enough support given in terms of the same supports that you are giving to the equipment side, like SEZ type of imports and all the tax breaks that we discussed. That is one thing that is really will be appreciated. The other thing is many of the people here talked about the talent pool, and we also see it in our business that people who really understand analytics of chemistry and the need for safety and that kind of expertise are scarce in India. So we also need to attract foreign talent, Indian people or non-Indian, whoever wants to come and work in India in the supporting industries. The Tata Fab IC has been very successful in getting a lot of overseas talent here. We must do the same, and whatever way we can, the ISM 2.0 can support that. That will be a great thing. The final is on the sustainability side. The Prime Minister this morning talked about carbon capture and sustainable business models. So from a gases and perspective, also the sustainability is something that we have all been working on. Many of you know that India has embarked on something known as green hydrogen. So we have ourselves set up India's first commercial green hydrogen plant, pretty operational, with zero carbon impact. And we could extend the same thing to the fab and the OSAT ecosystem, where we can deploy this solution, which is available for carbon capture from the gases side of things. So these are the three specific things that I think that if ISM 2.0 can help us to build on the resilience and the world-class innovation that we think is required for India to be successful. That will be great.
Great. Thank you so much, Diganta. And, I'll now give myself some space because I'm here representing the equipment, wafer fab equipment space and the likely similar challenges that my peers in the OSAT space are likely to face. I will say that there are two things that, generally speaking, supporting Tata as a customer in India is really not a challenge for us global players, because we are used to doing that around the world, no matter where our customers may be. But there are certain ease of doing business aspects that directly relate to supporting a customer like you. I think, Utpal, you mentioned the vendor managed inventory. How is that treated from a tax and accounting perspective? That's a very important thing. Warehousing, because you want us to support you with a 2-hour turnaround. You need a part delivered to you in 2 hours. Now that may be in a bonded warehouse on our side. Today, the paperwork and the process that it takes to just transfer something like that out and get it to you alone will far exceed the 2-hour timeline. So having a system that looks through, having a set of policies that are tied off with the other agencies, other ministries in the government that have regulatory authority over some of these aspects. The finance ministry, for example, or which controls, customs and how customs duties are managed and reported. We are, from an equipment industry point of view, the industry is ready to follow all the regulations and perform all the duties that are needed. However, if there could be a trusted delivery framework that could be established for these companies that are, established suppliers of equipment to, say, Tata and to the OSATs, a sort of a special designation to allow these customer spare parts or customer equipment or those things to be freely delivered without hindrance and paperwork to follow. Sort of kind of a trusted deliverer. That would be one aspect I would look for. It's not. I'm not sure, sir, Sushil sir, if that's directly under ISM, but as an integrative approach across ministries, this is something that should be considered. The other thing I will say is there is a whole opportunity for both the material side for players like Inox as well as players like Lam and other semiconductor equipment companies, which is the global market for equipment and the global market for components that go into our equipment. If you look at the number of fabs that are being built around the world this year, if I looked at the last semiconductor industry report, it was well over 80 fabs were being built around the world. And we're talking about a few in India out of that 80 fabs. So relatively speaking, the market opportunity is quite large globally. So as we are investing and developing certain capabilities in India around equipment and materials, we should not only be looking at thinking about leveraging those to support Indian fabs and Indian OSATs, but also to leverage that capability to support fabs globally and create a separate economic engine and a source of jobs and employment, and also secure a stronger place in the overall global supply chain. I believe this has also been stated, make in India for the world, has been also stated as an objective of the PM in various comments that he has made. So with that in mind, I would argue that both of these industries, the materials and the equipment industry, are very R&D intensive industries. The industries are lifeblood is R&D, and majority of the value, we are high mix and low volume type industries. The chemical industry is a very high volume, low mix business, but within that, the electronic materials industry is a very low volume, high mix industry, very similar to what equipment industry are. So for these industries, R&D is the lifeblood of these industries. So whatever the scheme may have, specs did have a coverage for R&D. So I would expect and hope that ISM 2.0 will continue to cover those kinds of R&D investments that are being made in this part of the segment, number one. And number two, our observation, at least I can speak for Lam, is that over the past 30 years or so, India has built up a very strong set of capabilities in supporting the automotive, aerospace, and say medical equipment, healthcare sectors, where a number of the components that are used in those types of industries are similar to the components used in semiconductor equipment. I'll talk about robotics, I'll talk about flanges, I'll talk about valves, I'll talk about fittings, we'll talk about sheet metal. So just in terms of the significant fraction of what goes as input cost into a semiconductor equipment can be served by a lot of these players in the supply chain. I understand, sir, that the ISM 2.0 intends to cover the supply chain as well. So to the extent that the supply chain needs support, what we have heard from our suppliers is that sometimes they have to make an investment in a clean room, for example, just because they don't do that for aerospace, they need to do that for us. There is some incremental investment from their side. Perhaps they could look for support from ISM on those sort of incremental capex investments. They also have a number of assets that our industry is a very it has very short product cycles. So compared to say an automotive industry or an aerospace industry, which has very long product cycles. So in a short product cycle environment, you have to ramp up and come down very quickly. And many times our suppliers have to invest. For example, a machining supplier may have to order 30 CNC machines ahead of the PO so that they can actually serve the demand when the demand is there. And sometimes in India, we find our suppliers are afraid to take that sort of a risk. So if there is some kind of support for the suppliers in ISM 2.0 around de-risking their capital investments, perhaps collateralizing the equipment that they may be buying as security, but allowing them to able to take those kinds of risks against a known demand forecasts given by companies like Lam and or our peers in the industry or even Tata's. So these are some things that our suppliers are also looking for from the industry. Beyond that, a number of areas around ease of doing business, I would say, is quite critical. We have submitted, our ideas specifically. I believe other companies in the space have also submitted several ideas. It's a long list, which I won't go into right now. I'll speak of two other main aspects from our perspective. One is training, and I think you mentioned it, Pankaj, that there needs to be vocational training, and it's not just for our engineers and PhDs. Vocational training centers today are not equipped with the right equipment, or there's no pilot line or a learning line where somebody can go in and get exposed to these things. And so uh, the training time or the time to productivity for a new hire at any level of the organization, be it as a associate's degree or a diploma holder, trying to do their trades job, to the PhD we are hiring from Indian Institute of Science. The time it's taking to get these people to be as productive as possible is a significant gap. On the PhD for process side, Lam has made several commitments. I think our customers are benefiting from that with the kind of digital training programs that we have. But on the other hand, we do need, it would be beneficial if we could establish certain centers of excellence in the regions around the country where prospective employees can go to get to learn and get certified. And it could be short courses, like you said, maybe 2 to 3 month courses, or get an NSQF certification on some of these skills. That would be very helpful from my perspective. So that's what I would like to add from the equipment side. I will go to Gani from Yali to say, Gani, how do you see this side of the ecosystem, and what are the challenges for the capital side of the equation with these very capital intensive, long cycle developments, especially in the supply chain side?
Yeah, so our fund is more focused on the chip design, but
Yeah.
in terms of manufacturing, WOSAT, it is, without question, in my understanding, a government has to do a lot right? I mean, government has to step in and do a lot of subsidy. It has happened in China. That's the story. Malaysia is the story. So I think it's not necessarily a clear private equity or a VC play, not for sure, not a private equity play, but more a very strategic play. And eventually it could become, but the government has to step in and do a lot more in this type, right? And in terms of all other critical minerals, gases, and all that stuff, as somebody highlight, I mean, previous panelists told, a good joint venture with all the critical suppliers in the world. We are not going to develop this quickly. So I think a pragmatic step would be to, find out the 10 partners who are very key, bring them to India, do some joint ventureship, give some attractive financial benefits to them, and then that may be the right step in my mind.
Excellent. All right. So we have, I'll come back to everyone on the panel with one last question. Yes.
Can I just add, as you were speaking, this is Utpal from Tata Electronics.
Sure, please.
As you were speaking your comments, there are a couple of things that I wanted to submit to Meaty, and I know Sushil Pal is here from Meaty. So I think there is a capital exemption that we got in the budget, which is up to March of 2028. And then several other provisions like the toll manufacturing, the vendor managed inventory, taxation. All these taxation provisions are for some reason limited to 5 years. We have already made a submission separately, but I would like to mention in this forum as well that an extension of those provisions to 2047, like we did with the AI data center tax holiday, will be great for the semiconductor industry for fast tracking the ecosystem development within India. So I would humbly submit that if we can consider that 2047 as the timeline for these tax exemptions, that will be phenomenal. Thank you.
Great.
And one other thing is the mask shop that we had a discussion on, that even the gentleman from CDIL also spoke about. For a faster product company, having a local mask shop is extremely important because that will accelerate the cycle time for the product companies. Having, if you want to prototype your product and run through silicon, the first thing you need is mask. So having domestic mask capability can be extremely instrumental in terms of accelerating that whole cycle. The reason Taiwan has these fabulous design companies emerging is because they have the local mask shops, they have the MPW program, they have IP ecosystem. They can turn around within few months, if not weeks, in terms of taking an idea from ideation to all the way to silicon. So I wanted to mention that mask shop having that locally is also going to help the product companies as well.
Great. All right. So back to Pankaj. After hearing the other folks on this stream, any closing thoughts from you?
Thanks. Thank you so much. I think I did cover everything. My only request would be that let's try to create a demand supply chain link between OSATs to the EMS, and thereafter between the raw materials to the OSATs. And the way that suggested is that there should be some incentive for the EMS to buy the components from the domestic OSATs, and accordingly, there has to be some sort of not that large, but some small incentive for the supply chain to come into India. I mean, as a CDL from my side, I for a vendor side, I can at least suggest 3 or 4 vendors for each of the materials that we have discussed. And I've had my personal one-on-one discussion. But moment this ISM, this IA 2.0 comes out, then it'll probably be a little better for us to take a small delegation or a discussion or invite some of them over here, because there is still the hesitancy to come to India. They're still not very sure what's going to happen. So what we can do, what I have discussed with these, now I can share that idea. I said, okay, don't come. We'll find you the right partner. You want to have a partner, we'll find you the right partner. You don't have to look at for space, the land, building. There are partners available today because they are excited. Indian companies are also excited. The OSATs are coming up. How can they participate in the supply chain? So let's identify some companies in India identify the companies outside, and try and get this supply chain moving in the materials. I will quote what one of the earlier secretaries of METI used to say, Mr. Ajay Sani. He said, "Dulha to aa gaya hai, ab barat aani baki hai." This was his favorite thing. So it's right. We've got the ISM moving. Now let's get the Bharat also moving to India with the supply chain coming in. So that's all. Thank you so much. Wonderful, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you. I'll go to you, Diganta. Any closing remarks?
Yeah, I think most of the colleagues have covered all the points. I specifically like the thought about the ease of doing business that you brought up, Rangesh. I must say that we have looked at it, and there has been some discussions offline already with the meeting on this topic on how to well, one is to localize the manufacturing process, and that will take, let's say, 3 to 5 years, and how to manage the supply chain in that period, interim period, right? So in that period, this ease of doing business with respect to customs duties and zero import taxes and all of these, that is definitely a great help if the ISM 2.0 can provide in the interim process. So this, I wanted to emphasize this point, though you already made it. I thought let me also.
Yep. Great. Thank you, Diganta. Neil, any closing remarks from you?
Hey guys, I think I just want to make 2 points in slightly different angles, right? One is ISM trying to stack instead of fragmenting, fabs are different and designs are different and automation is different. I think stacking them up, bringing the ecosystem together so that the end user has, it can see everything happening within the region, right? The fab, there is an associated design entity, there's an associated service industry along with it. I think some of those pilots, some of those, poster boys, partnerships will have to be mediated for some of these things to truly fructify, right? That is one. And I think I just want to comment on the whole VC stuff to add on to what Gani was saying, right? There is, while the money exists, right? There's always a fear and a risk capital and the patience part of the capital that's missing, and it's going to take its time. Right? It's going to happen, but if ISM or the government can play an intermediary role where startups in the pre-revenue stage or pre-customer stage who have a promise, right, who are being mentored by maybe the currently qualified DLI winners, right? If they can be handheld by the government, right, through equity, through investments, through funds, through debt, I don't know, some ways that makes the company investable when they're ripe, right? Otherwise, you're going to end up with a lot of companies where they've raised 1 million, 2 million because they want to do a chip and no one else was giving more. They've raised funds and now they're stuck with bad directors or bad investors or people who are treating semicon as SaaS. They had the right conviction, they had the right motivation, but they got caught in a trap of money, right? So allocating a small fund for some tier 2 companies or tier 2 startups who don't have to become the Nvidias, but everything around them, I think that would be a nice way to look at the whole VC problem or the investment problem, that the risk is still being borne by the government or by the ISM to a certain time where they can see an exit as well, right? So some sort of fund of funds or fund of pre-revenue stages, I think that would be good. And the most important thing is education. I think they're in the right place to educate. What does India have to offer in terms of ecosystem? Why should semicon be looked at differently? To the VCs, help educate new startups on how to pitch to VCs and what segments they are. I think ISM has a bird's eye view on everything. They know exactly what cogs are moving in what directions. And if they can act as educators on both sides of the coin, I think that would be fundamentally important as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil. Jyotish, any closing remarks?
Sure. Yeah. As I said earlier, there should be a special emphasis on like a full stack design with extremely high focus on the next generation technologies like AI. And some points which I missed in the last phase was, I think there should be enough support system. In ISM 1.0, the companies were not matured. So the R&D fund for bringing the design up was extremely useful. But going forward to build the next NVIDIA or Qualcomm, you need to support them through the entire production engineering phase, where it is an most expensive journey for a fabless player, like the huge NRE cost, the full mask cost, and all those things. There are no support available today in the ISM 1.0 to support that kind of expensive phases that the fabless communities go through. So ISM 2.0 should address, especially they should support ISM 1.0 supported companies to go to market and de-risk them from big investments, right? And also, one more important point is there are no good labs available in the country for post-silicon validation and pre-silicon validation. And that will be a very important step because because unlike the California, you cannot rent an equipment. You have to buy those equipments or you have to use some labs, and there are no proper labs and ecosystem available in the country to go through that expensive post-silicon validation phase. And also, one more important point is that there should not be any kind of limit called, say, 15 crore limit or 20 crore limits. It should be based on the merit of the design. For example, if you are talking about like, for example, an AI server chip versus a IoT MCU chip, it should not be considered in the same kind of scheme. I mean, they need separate treatment in the evaluation phase as well as support phase. So these are the concluding remarks. And one more important point: the GST scheme today for importing your test chips. Today, the startups have to pay, for example, 20% for importing their own designs for testing purpose. For us, it was 1.25 crores we have to spend just for getting the 100 samples here for testing. That is extremely high, very high expense compared to the kind of the funding we are receiving. So startups should be given like some kind of GST waivers, especially for the companies who are building their first silicon fabrication. So that is one more request I have. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So we're nearing the end. I'll close with my own remarks. First of all, thank you all for your participation. I think it was very insightful. A lot of interesting new points that were made, I think, by several of the speakers. Very helpful. I hope the ISM team found those inputs valuable. I'm sure that you will collect those inputs, and my confidence in you and your team is very high because my experience over the last few years has been you do actually listen, and when you haven't been able to incorporate something we have requested, you have explained why. And so to me, that speaks to the high professionalism I have observed from METI and ISM throughout my interaction. So I'm sure that will continue, and I'm sure these will be taken very close to heart. I will close with one recommendation, sir, is that during the specs process, ease of even the application. Now we're not talking about doing business, but the ease of doing the application, getting approved, and then getting paid was honestly very painful, right? And what happens sometimes is the project management agencies, who are tasked with doing this, don't understand what we do. They don't understand the intent of the policy. They go to the specific words. They have unwritten rules. One of the things we should try to do is kill all the unwritten rules. If a PMA says, I have not approved your payment because of some rule that is not mentioned anywhere and nobody knows about it, that cannot be allowed, right? If there should be a very clear set of, this is what an applicant has to say, do, this is what you have to submit, and if you submit this and we approve you, this is what you have to provide as validation that you have indeed done what you said you would do. We are okay with that. I think it's the right thing to do to verify. But to create unwritten, unknown requirements and to cause delays and this is not a pleasant experience. So one of the suggestions I would say with ISM 2.0 is somehow if we can integrate the PMA team with the ISM team, because you bring the expertise, you know what you meant when you wrote this. But the PMA folks are purely finance and accounting folks. They even sit in different buildings. So I would recommend that we integrate this together. I will also say that many of our suppliers are small companies. They are trying to get into this business. They don't have people in Delhi. They don't have the sophistication that some of us larger companies have. And they always are seeking help for, give us a guidance. How do we navigate through the ISM, ways of doing things so that we can actually qualify and learn what's possible to us. So as part of the rollout of ISM 2.0, considering the ease of application and also educating the industry on what's available and how they might take advantage of that would be beneficial. So that would be my closing remarks apart from what else we have said. So thank you very much. Thank you all. I think we've reached the end of our time. We've gone a couple of minutes past. Sushil sir, I'll turn it back to you. Please, any comments from you closing?
No, thank you. Thank you, Rangesh, and thank you for this honest feedback. I think ISM 1.0 catered to a different client altogether, and ISM 2.0 would cater to a different clients altogether, which would largely be, also be MSME as well. And
yes,
I think we have gone through that process when it with regard to the electronic component manufacturing scheme, where I think anybody with a turnover of maybe even a 10 crore would qualify to apply for the scheme. So we are
yes,
familiar as to how, familiar with the challenge which the applicants actually face in applying and getting through the process. And also, I think the whole thing needs to be kind of a, not only the MPW wafer fabrication process for testing and validation need to be crashed for the chip design. I think this application process for the approval also needs to be crashed, equally as well. We are doing that in the ACMS. I'm sure 2.0 will, every new version or every successor scheme, is a more refined version of the previous scheme. And I'm sure 2.0 will be one step better, one step finer, and one step simpler than the ESMS electronic component scheme. So that's on this part. And yes, and thank you all the panelists for your very honest and valuable feedback. We sincerely take them, and it gives us confidence that whichever stage we are in the process for ISM 2.0, I think it gives us confidence that we are on the right track. So, but we'll take that feedback for the 2.0 policy formulation as well. And to close, I think I would thank Rangesh Raghavanji, for taking this leadership and for moderating the session, and all the panelists also, for sparing your valuable time for this webinar. Thank you all so much, and thank you all those in the audience as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.